Welcome to The Leap, a podcast by Founders Collective, where we explore the courage, conviction, and chaos behind building something from nothing. I'm Gav Tai, and each episode I sit down with a founder to unpack the real story behind their journey. The life they left behind, the moment they decided to take the leap, the struggles that followed, and what keeps them going when things get tough. This isn't about highlight reels or polished success stories. It's about the truth of what it takes to start, the fear, the belief, and the lessons that shape who we become along the way. So if you're a founder or someone standing on the edge of your own leap, this is for you. Let's dive in. Emily Price, the co-founder of Talisone. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, excellent. Welcome to The Leap. How are you?
Yeah, great. That's really good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. So tell us about yourself, for those who may not know you.
Yeah, well, my name's Emily. I'm one of the co-founders of Talisone, where we've created an automatic data room. So the idea is that we use AI and automation to make it really easy to build your data room and also maintain it whilst you're closing your deal.
Okay, so for those who may not have gone down the capital raising route yet, what is a data room in a most layman's terms?
Yeah, it's interesting. I get asked this question quite a bit from especially early stage founders. A data room is essentially, think of it in its most simple terms as cloud storage, and except it's used for a particular purpose. It's a repository of all of the information for potential investors in your company to look at to see if your company is actually as valuable as you say it is. So you go out saying, I want a capital raise, we're worth millions of dollars, and an investor's going to go prove it. And a data room is what you need to put together to prove that to them.
Okay, and so what kind of things do businesses put in data rooms?
Yeah, there's a broad range, and it really often depends on the category or industry that the company is in. But broadly speaking, the areas that for all companies that cover, you have your legal documentation, so making sure that your company is properly incorporated, that you've been managing your governance and your legals well from day one. Your finances, so to prove, what are your financial metrics? How's your financial performance? Things like sales and marketing. So where are your customers coming from? What's your marketing strategy? How are you going to grow in the next 12 months to 5 years? And then other areas like intellectual property, people and culture, and other areas that are maybe specific to your industry.
Yeah, right. So I can imagine the way you would structure something like a data room would really may not give the first impression because the pitch is the first impression, right? But may reinforces a thought on, hey, Emily knows what she's doing, or oh, that Gab's a mess. Like we'll stay away from that. I would imagine that would have an impact.
Yeah, and think of like the data room is the store of your company when you're going to investors. So your pitch deck is maybe your shop window and it's bright and shiny. It entices someone enough to go, you know what, I want to take a step in and have a look around. And then the data room is actually a store itself, and they're walking around kind of touching and feeling what are things like. And it really gives an impression of, can I trust this company and can I trust this founder as well?
Yeah.
And someone who has a really well organized data room, which has all the information that an investor is looking for, you show that you're sophisticated, that you're diligent in how you're running your business, and you know what it takes to grow a successful business as well.
Yeah, right. So how long does it take to put, this is how long's a piece of string. I already know my own answer. But if we're just going for a seed round or a, early investment round, how long does it take to put something like this together?
Yeah, it tends to be, what size of the round as well. So seed rounds, if you're raising in Australia versus the US, seed rounds in the US are a lot larger than here at home. And also if you're deep tech or not. But let's say generally speaking, you're B2B SaaS. In the earlier stages, like pre-seed and seed, it's not as extensive as you would expect a Series A and B. But if you don't have your documentation prepared, we've seen startups that can take days or weeks to put together a data room, and sometimes even as far as months, because they just haven't been thinking about a data room and what it actually means to go capital raise and be deal ready. And it ends up dragging along the process. So, our tagline is time kills all deals. And if you're not ready, after you've pitched to someone and an investor goes, oh, I'm interested in your company, and then you take weeks or months to get together your data room, it shows that you're not really deal ready. And it
Okay.
stretches that. that kind of time out for you.
Yeah, right. So how did you come across this idea?
Yeah, so I am a startup lawyer, is what I was doing before I actually jumped into co-founding Talisone. And I worked with startups every day and I saw them actually experience this. So a lot of them would be going towards a capital raise and then all of a sudden having to think about, I need to prepare my documentation and my back office and my data room. And they wouldn't have any of that information prepared. So it was a mad scramble last minute. And I thought, you know what? I think technology can solve this problem.
Yeah. And so what were they typically used before that? Like Google Docs or a Notion or something like that, right? Because I do hear that being thrown around a lot. I do know that you probably get what you pay for in those instances.
Yeah, so Google Drive is definitely it's a good starting point. I think if you're particularly early stage, and you're running on a shoestring budget, if you can start with something, starting with a Google Drive is a great place to go. You know what? I'm going to start at least collecting all of my information, and maybe for a pre-seed or a family and friends round, that's going to be okay. It's where you're kind of getting into the more sophisticated stage, like a seed, Series A onwards, that you probably need something a bit more structured.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly what you said, you get what you pay for. So you end up having to do a lot more of the work because the product isn't fit for purpose. It's just cloud storage.
Yeah, right. I can imagine if I've spoken to some founders or even worked at a startup where the founder, he was pitching, I reckon, 100 companies, and sharing that data across and tracking that would have been a challenge in itself, right? Knowing who's interacting with it. And yeah.
Yeah, and in the early stages, you're approaching a lot of different investors and you need to slowly whittle your way through all of them and see which ones are really engaging or not, because you don't want to waste your time on an investor who actually isn't interested. And so having those metrics of who's engaging, who's looking at what, helps you to narrow your focus and go, okay, these are maybe the 10 investors and the 5 investors who are actually going to have a higher chance of writing a check at the end.
Yeah, right. Because I would imagine if they are likely to, you would get a group of investors who are more interested in investing. Their behavior or the way they interact with documentation is going to be like on a higher level, I would imagine, in most cases, than someone who just looks at one page and goes, yeah, nah. Like they're going to have a lot more interaction with your data. And I guess you'd want to see that, right?
Yeah, and it's more likely, depending on the size of the investor as well. If they have a team and you notice, oh, there's multiple people in that team as well who are looking in, that means that they're talking amongst themselves about us and
Yep.
they're interested. It's like all of those bits of information form a
Yep.
picture for you.
It's like that with lead generation. HubSpot has, and other outreach platforms they can tag your email so you can see who is looking at it. And in more than one occasion, in many occasions before, I can see an email will get shared. It goes once, twice, sometimes 30, 40 times. And then I went, hang on a sec, something's happening here that I'm not aware of. And then you can set your clock by it. About 3 days later, someone will call and go, hey, I got your email. And then you're like, okay, there's all these feelers out in the world, if you know where to look, that there is interest, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yep.
use that HubSpot feature too. It's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So take us back to your life before you were a founder. What you said you were a lawyer. What were you doing working with startups?
Yeah, so I was a generalist lawyer and really helping startups with a range of like corporate and commercial work. So it could be things from capital raising to their day-to-day business as well. I worked for a firm called Sprint Law, who are one of our partners, and they're like a new law firm. So it was fully digital, and a lot of the customers were, predominantly startups. So I was engaging with startups every day, talking with founders every day. And I think I got the founder, like the itch from just talking with them every day and going, you know what, seeing how energized they were about their business, I thought, I think this is something that I want to kind of tap into.
Yeah, it'd be different, I would imagine. I've never studied to be a lawyer, but it's very rigorous and very structured, I would imagine. And now coming into a startup world, when I first come into it, I was like, oh my gosh, it feels so loose. It doesn't even feel like we're working. I would imagine that would have been a period of adjustment for you.
Yeah, it's definitely I think one of the biggest differences between being a lawyer and being a founder is the difference between like good and good enough.
Hmm.
And, if with your legals, the standard of what is good enough is a lot higher. Like it needs to be good. You need to be protecting your client as opposed to being a founder. Sometimes you've got to be a bit more scrappy and maybe your marketing campaign and your collateral isn't pixel perfect, but that's good enough to get what you need to for the next stage.
I have that question later on, but it sounds like that is something you would have had to unlearn coming across into the founder world.
Yeah, I think once again, it helped a lot with that transition because I was dealing with founders every day. And so
Hmm.
that mentality of the good enough and being a bit more scrappy and looking the kind of law that I was practicing was already leaning more towards good enough. Like the kind of legal advice that you give to a startup versus maybe a big corporate is going to be really different. And so
Yeah.
already like taking into consideration, everything that's going on meant that it wasn't as jarring as I imagine if I'd, jumped off from a big corporate
Yeah.
law firm. But yeah, it was still, there was a lot of unlearning involved.
I live just good enough at housework at home with my wife, and she does not live to that standard. So there's always
Ooh.
yeah, there's always conflict. so, so what did a typical day or week look like for you in your law when you're in a lawyer?
Yeah, it was like I said, I was dealing with startups every day and I was working remotely. And so my clients were all across Australia, some in the UK and New Zealand as well. And it was, every day it's working on a different project. So it was really, rather than, working on one massive deal that might be going on for months, it was every day working on really like short timelines because startups are moving so rapidly, like they need things immediately.
Mm.
So it was fast paced, it was varied. I had clients across all different kinds of industries. So I got exposure to everything from health tech to B2B SaaS to, industrial building, massive machines. And yeah, it was really interesting getting to have exposure to all these different industries.
Yeah, okay. And how did you feel about that chapter of your life? Were you comfortable? Were you ambitious, restless? Yeah, how did you feel about that?
It was funny in my interview for the job, I'd said that I hadn't ever actually planned to be a lawyer. Maybe when I first went into law school, that was the plan. But towards the end, I'd been working in marketing at a B2B SaaS company called Parkable and was working in marketing and thought, that's the career that I wanted to. And few circumstances happened that I ended up finding myself needing to transition out. And I thought, I had this law degree, but if I'm going to do law, I actually want to work in startups. So that was kind of the driver to go into wanting to be in like the tech and startup space as a
Yeah.
lawyer.
Yeah, okay. And then were the early hints back then that maybe that you were ever going to start a business?
Who I think, yeah, I think I'd always had an interest in entrepreneurialism. Like I said, I'd worked in a startup for a while. During university, I did a lot in the social enterprise space as well. So there was always this kind of element of entrepreneurialism and getting to feel really hands-on with the impact and like the work that you do leading to some sort of something that was impactful.
Yeah.
And yeah, the once again, going then into working with startups, it didn't seem so outlandish to go start something of your own. I'd the kind of tipping point, I guess, was for me going, you know what, I want to do something different. And it doesn't have to be entrepreneurialism, but I got to a point where this was a few years ago. I said, before I turn 30, I want to do something that's just like super risky. I want to just jump off the path, take a massive risk in terms of my career and job. And that I was toying with a few different ideas and yeah, came across Talisone and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah, wow. Oh, one of the biggest realizations I had is working with startups, but I was also working for a blue collar recruitment company. Is my seat there, I was earning $100,000, but there's two seats next to me. He was on $350,000, and there was another seat not far on closer and a little bit more than that. And I was like, and even in a startup, the founder was just in an office. You could touch him. He wasn't that far away. And I was like, why can't I do it? Like there is, there is not that much difference. Everyone has the same opportunity from here to here. It's just a little bit of planning and a little bit of hard work. And that's what I was the same thing. And I come into the startup and I was like, oh, I could do this. No one really knows what they're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I could give it a go.
Yeah, that's 100% the attitude of starting a business is I don't really know how to do everything, but I think I can learn.
I can solve problems. I'll figure it out. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what did this decision feel like when you decided to start Talisone? Oh, before that, I did see that you did go and work for River City Labs for a while as the ops manager. Like you were certainly, at least by your LinkedIn profile, you were certainly around that space and looked like you were making small steps towards doing something, immersing yourself a little bit more into the into that call it a culture, that industry. Would that be right? Would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. The startup community in Brisbane is amazing. I think it's a really supportive community, and I've luckily been involved in it for quite a while. From even when I was practicing law. Everyone is so welcoming to anyone who has an interest in startups.
Yep.
The transition into River City Labs was me transitioning out of being a lawyer. So I'd already met my co-founders and we'd actually started meeting once a week. So I'd gone from being full-time to 4 days a week so that I had this 1 day capacity to test and try new things. And at some point that 1 day a week was dedicated into Talisone. And we got to a point with my co-founders where I think it was about 6 months of kind of vetting each other, vetting the idea, going, are we sure we want to dive into this? To then going, okay, well, I'm going to transition to part-time working at RCL. They needed someone for 6 months for someone transitioning out of maternity leave as an ops manager. And I thought, this is perfect. I can become more involved in the Brisbane startup ecosystem. I can transition to half-time so I can dedicate the other half to Talisone, and it's not like this jarring full-time work to being a startup founder.
Yeah, and I've interviewed quite a few founders now on the leap, and it's a common theme is everyone is making the leap in a way that is sensible for their risk appetite and situation. Like some people have married with kids and a family, they can't do that, but they've been working and stored up a war chest. Others are just doing it slowly. So yeah, it's a common theme for sure. So
yeah, I think one of the most important lessons that a mentor gave was think about not only your runway in terms of your business, like how long can the business last? Think about your personal runway as well, and think about your co-founder's runway, and all of that is so important to take into consideration because it's more than just can the business survive, it's can you survive.
Yeah. And you have to, there's also another runway is you have to be, give the market enough time to warm to you as well, because just because you have something that's amazing, if they've never heard of you, there's not a lot of trust there. You need some consistency, and magic things happen after 6 months. You could almost set your watch to it, and also 12 months again. Pete, there's a really weird thing where if people think they know you for more than a calendar year, 12 months, they're like, oh yeah, I've known them for, then you kind of go through this subconscious relationship barrier or friendship barrier. They go, oh yeah, we've known each other for a couple of years now, and it's different to just meeting. So yeah, you have to give the market time to warm up. So if you can do it in parallel, you can shave a bit of time off on in my opinion, in winning sales as well, finding clients.
Yeah, we've definitely found that.
So how did you who did you talk to about your decision to go full time into Talisone, and what was their reaction?
Every person that I could talk to. It was definitely not something that I decided on my own. I really heavily leaned into the people that I knew in the startup community, my friends, my family. It was kind of trying to get an idea of does the business make sense? Is this something that other people thought, especially in the startup industry, did this exist? Would this be a product that people would be interested in?
Yeah.
And then personally talking to the people in my life and going, okay, what does this look like for my world? Kind of like the personal runway piece, which is thinking about, well, what is the structure of my life and can I fit being a startup founder into that? Am I the kind of, I have an idea of who I am as a person, and it's always interesting to hear other people's opinion of you as well. And that I think gives you a fuller picture.
Yep.
And yeah, I spoke to as many people who would listen to me about what I was planning on doing, and the majority said, yes, absolutely, go ahead, go do it. Why not? If you make a mistake and it turns out it wasn't a big thing, what's there really to lose? I was lucky in the place not to have, the house and the kids and everything, that had the ability to take a bit more risk.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that personal runway is a really interesting concept I haven't heard before. When I sat down and said to my wife, I said, "This is what I'm thinking of doing." I said, "It's not necessarily the starting part it's an issue, right? Because you've got to make sure you have money for the house and stuff like that." I said, "But what about let's plan for when we're successful? Because it will pull me out of the house for a few years. We've got to be prepared for me to do that. I have to do whatever I need to do to make this successful. If that means traveling to the US for longer periods of time," or I said, "Are you prepared for us to do that?" She's like, "Yeah, like if it's only for a short period of time, it's not forever, and it'll set us up. Yeah, we can absolutely make that work." So yeah, we had that joint decision together, because I think people don't think about what happens when you are successful. You plan for it, but if you do, the requirement of your time and effort, it's not going to go down, it goes up. So yeah, that's a really interesting concept, the personal roadmap.
Yes, it's, and talking with other people in your life that it's going to impact as well.
Yeah, that's for sure. So once you made the leap, what did reality look like?
It was a lot slower than I thought it would be. I think
that's
the.
Do you think you'd walk in and go, I'm here, Talisone is here, let's go. It just took a bit longer.
Yeah, well, product development, right? Software development is you go, technology. It was still this was 3 years ago that we kind of started building, and AI was still in its kind of nascent stages, especially in its influence on software development. So it's so interesting to see, the speed of software development, how that's changed in just the 3 years that I've been a founder. Right. But in the early stages, it took a lot longer. We had to learn what software development looked like from the ground up. We had to learn what, product design, how do we engage with potential customers and their experience, that kind of tension between what we think they need and what they say they need. Thinking about business, building trust as well, building a brand, all of that takes time. And you hear about these overnight successes, but quite often they're not actually an overnight success. There's like the saying of a 10-year overnight success. Yeah. There's so much groundwork you need to do. And I was hungry to move so fast and realize, actually, no, slow and steady is, well, maybe medium pace and steady, and learning and iterating is just as important as just like breakneck speed.
Yeah, I think it's sad that people use those overnight successes as the benchmark. And I don't think it's true. Like, yes, lightning does strike some people. But if it goes too fast, they might not have the skills to handle it, and they could crash and burn. Or maybe it's an overnight success, but they've failed in 4 or 5 businesses beforehand, and they go, now I know what I've done wrong, I'll get it right. I think that's really important as well. And also, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? It's a 10-year, like you said, it's a 10-year journey. You don't want to go 130% for 10 years. You'll end up with a heart attack or something bad going on.
It's not worth it.
No, not at all. So I guess the question I had next was, what are some of the biggest challenges in those early months? But I think you just listed them out. Was there a moment that you thought, oh shit, this might not work?
Yeah, I think it was towards I lost all concept of time. Yes, last year. Yeah, I remember we were heading towards, we'd gotten into the UQ Momentum Accelerator program, and it was great because, you'd go in every week and you'd kind of pitch your product, and you're talking to a room full of other founders, and you're going to networking events really often. So you're getting lots of feedback on what your business is. And it was this kind of breaking point for us of going, our pitch our elevator pitch isn't hitting. So the kind of elevator pitch that I gave at the beginning of this call was not at all what it was 12 months ago.
Okay.
And realizing that, okay, we need to like break down completely the way that we pitch our product. So the product itself hasn't changed fundamentally between, in terms of what we're trying to build and what we have built between 12 months and now, but the way that we talk about it has completely changed. And I think that was a big point for us to go, have we, you question then the business and the product, you go, oh, have we actually built something that people don't want? And it was talking to lots of people to realize, okay, no, we've built something that people want, but it takes us too long to explain its value. So we need to be able to succinctly explain the value so that someone goes, oh, I understand enough and I want to hear more.
Yeah, okay. One of the biggest things I learned about communicating value is value sits in the eye of the beholder. So it's only valuable if they see it. So you've got to tie it into their assumed problems. And then if you can nail their problems first and then your value makes sense second without them understanding the problem, then it doesn't land as well. So yeah, it's really, that was one of the biggest things for me. So how did you push through that moment?
Like I said, talking to lots of people, it was actually, one person in particular at a networking event and kind of gave the elevator pitch, and there's the polite way of saying what they said and what they actually said, but they said, that was terrible, try again but come talk to me in like a week's time, like don't try again now. And they said it in a way that was a bit more like, oh wow, okay, but it was exactly what I needed. And then I went kind of back to the accelerator program the next week and also just reached out to, once again, anyone who would talk to me going, this isn't hitting. I don't know what it is that we're doing wrong. My co-founders did the same thing. Yeah. And it was, an absolute like knowledge gathering time to go, okay, like let's try different things. And every single day we were trying different phrasings, and we ended up landing on this idea of an automatic data room.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that it was, once again, it's just about like community, knowing people, and the generosity of people to go, yes, I'm willing to spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours talking through this with you.
It's not uncommon that founders who they're too close to the problem. I fall in the same category. Sometimes I go, I'm too close, and sometimes it takes my wife. She works in a room sometimes with me, and she gets I get off a call with someone. She goes, "Are you doing what you tell your clients not to do?" And I was like, "Oh shit, I am." Like, it's just because we know it so well, we need to. Yeah, that extra perspective can really draw us out of our own head. So
yeah, I think I had a mentor once tell me, like, this is also something I had to unlearn as being a lawyer, is like, you're looking at this too much like a lawyer. You're kind of over analyzing and trying to overthink everything. Just, you need to simplify it is the problem. You're trying to explain too much. Just like tear everything apart and just leave the core of what it is that you're trying to convey. And that's enough. Don't try to like cram so much into one sentence.
Yeah, that's a good advice. Yeah. So how have you changed as a person since you started?
Oh, just in so many different ways. I think the one is like risk appetite, which, once again, is no surprise, going from being a lawyer who is a risk mitigator to being a founder who is chasing risks. And being so much more comfortable with trusting your gut instinct a lot of the times, rather than trying to make a decision based on gathering as much information. So as a lawyer, you go, if a client comes to you asking a question, you go, okay, I'm going to go research and read as much as I possibly can, condense it all, and then come to my decision then. As a founder, you don't have that luxury. And so you need to build up your instincts and have a good enough feedback loop that you're learning. So, whether sometimes it's finding a potential employee or a partner or an opportunity, learning to trust your gut a little bit and going, you know what, I've been doing this for 3 years and so far we're doing pretty well. I think I've got good instincts and trusting in that. And that has really helped to level me up. And also, it's such a big difference to the way I used to think 3 years ago, where I probably wouldn't have trusted my gut as much.
Yeah, right. How has your definition of success evolved since you started Talisone?
Mm, I I think it's looking at success in terms of in like short term, medium term, long term, looking and realizing that don't just think of the long term, but always have it in mind. So, and also know that that can change. It's an exercise that my co-founders and I go through maybe every 6 months or so, which is to sit down again and go, okay, what is our definition of success? Because it quite possibly has changed and there's circumstances impacting Tallystone as a business and ourselves personally that may mean that what we think of as the ideal exit or the what's the dream sailing off into the sunset vision that we want for ourselves, and yeah, accepting that those can change, and then also looking at, well, how do we decide to continue on, the startups, what is the statistic, like 1 in 10 or something. I don't know what the number is, but most startups fail, and you can't do these things forever. Like, you should actually be very conscious of the fact that sometimes it's just not going to work out. It doesn't matter how much effort you put in, how brilliant your product is. Could be that the market's not ready. Could be that a new competitor comes in, AI comes in and just takes over everything. So having those short term, okay, is this enough for us to decide to keep going? And then also, what is it that we're actually heading towards, and having, yeah, the flexibility for those to change, and then also thinking of it in those stages.
So, you've got a couple. How many co-founders do you have in the business with you?
I have two co-founders,
Yeah,
John and
and
Lockie.
John and Lockie. And how did you guys find each other? I'm going off the beaten path here a little bit.
That's all right. No, it's a wonderful set of coincidences. So I'd kind of had this idea of a different early stage vision of what Tallystone could be. And Lockie is a friend of mine, and I reached out saying, hey, I had this idea. I want to talk to someone about it, and you're a software developer. Can I run this through with you? And so for 30 minutes we had this call, and I kind of laid it all out, and he goes, actually, I'm kind of working on something similar already with John, who's his dad. Do you want to maybe meet up with both of us and, like, let's talk through this a bit more? And so I met up with John and Lockie, and John is a multi-time founder, angel investor, had seen this pain point from different perspectives to my own, and had also thought, we need a solution for this.
Okay.
And Lockie was a software engineer and thought the problem was really interesting. And it was just this perfect coincidence of, what are the chances someone else has seen this problem? They have the skill sets that are complementary to my own. Yeah, it was
Amazing.
just
Yeah.
like kismet.
Fate.
Yes.
And so communication, how important do you think communication is with founders?
Oh,
Between
it's
founders?
everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's yeah, you're seeing this, you're talking to this person quite possibly more than you do your partner or your family or your friends. You need to have good communication for it to last.
Yeah, I find it as well that you're putting your trust in each other, that you're going to hopefully you're doing this to have a big payoff in the future, right? We're banking on each other to be successful. And I think there's a lot of trust that's required there. Yeah, yeah. And like, I've got a co-founder with Six Sides, and I think our whole relationship personally before us has been set us up to have a great working relationship, because it is like a personal relationship too, right? You've got to be able to handle conflict, and some of it, not people aren't going to have the best days, and you've got to learn how to not take it personally, and then know sometimes when to put your foot down and go, hang on a sec, that's not acceptable, but being able to do it in a way that doesn't burn any bridges, right? Because you're not going anywhere. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it ends up being like family. It's you're
100%.
kind of stuck with them, but it forces you to really lean in and make things work.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you most proud of so far?
Oh, there's kind of moments, I guess, that I felt like a lot of pride. And then there's kind of looking at it overall. I think some of the parts that I've been most proud of is feedback from customers, is, being on a call with a customer, showing them a new feature and them going, wow, this is magic, like amazing. It was, a recent customer coming on board one day, the next day them sending out an invitation to a potential investor and going, oh, like we've really delivered on what we've promised. Like, this is amazing. And knowing that our product does what we say it does. Yeah, I think all of those moments with our customers and seeing how much they believe in us has just been, is what keeps us going as well.
Yeah, that seems like it ties into your definition of success. Just those little micro wins turn into many of those little micro wins turned into a medium wins, which many medium wins turn into the big win, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's the plan.
So building a company is going to take years of grit. What keeps you going?
Yeah, there's kind of there's multiple parts of it. There's like what keeps us going in terms of on Talisone, and then what keeps me going personally. I think for Talisone, it is like we set these short-term goals, we see ourselves meeting them, and then you can kind of latch onto that. And so I think, yeah, tying kind of what I was saying before, if you don't have like a measurement of what a success look like, then it doesn't matter how much grit you have, because then it turns into kind of blind faith. And so for me, like the idea of grit is more, okay, you need to have enough grit that you can set these goals, and if you meet them, you keep going. For myself personally, like what keeps me going working on this is I love what I do. In terms of, I've had lots of different jobs. One of Lockie, my co-founder, is always joking about, he's like, you're relatively young. How have you had all of these different jobs in very different industries? And out of all of the jobs I have, this is the one where I get the most joy out of. Like, I'm excited to go into work. I'm never going into the office dreading going in. I leave energized. And so I kind of know that this is what I should be doing, because I get to stretch myself creatively and then also analytically. Like, I'm doing so many different things every day.
Yeah, okay. You just knocked off about 3 of my questions here.
I'm sorry.
What's your personal why? And so you've answered that one. Don't worry about that one. So are there any daily or weekly habits that keep you grounded in sticking with your mission?
Yeah.
I would say you're highly organized. Yeah. And super neat. Yeah.
Well, funnily enough, I think it comes from, maybe I'm not naturally that way. So it's funny that I can be a bit naturally, if I'm not focused on it, disorganized. And so one thing that I learned, particularly during university, was I didn't do well in the first few years of university. Surprisingly, interestingly, I don't know, maybe it wasn't because of how unstructured it was. I went from high school to getting where it's really structured, to university, very unstructured, and realizing everything kind of fell apart and having to build these habits, because naturally I'm not organized. And so if I have these habits and I'm neat and have everything in place, then I know that I can excel. So that really helps to add a lot of structure into my day, into my week, into my month. And doing things like making sure that I have social things every week. So like going and seeing my friends, but also not too much, because I know that there's kind of a limit to how much that I can tolerate. I go swimming once a week as well, so moving my body. I try to do something like, these are general rules. I don't always follow them, because sometimes Talisone is like, no, you've got to like be completely focused on Talisone this week. But generally I try to do something creative as well. So like singing or dancing or painting or art, something to, just get me out of, I think, like what you were saying before about kind of getting into a rut. And if you're doing the same things every day, your body and your mind kind of gets stuck in one way of thinking. Yeah. And so if you push, like you push your body from exercising, or you do something super creative, all of a sudden your body's like, oh, I feel more expansive. And I find that really helpful to, it keeps me grounded, but also just kind of shakes things up. And so I'm not just like 100% or 130% Talisone all the time.
It's awesome. Yeah, there's a guy on Instagram called Jesse Itzler. He's married to the lady who owns Spanx, but he talks about misogi, a Japanese pastime called misogi, I think it's called, where every year do something different. Like that is completely
Mm.
like that you wouldn't normally do. So like next year I'm learning the harmonica. I am not musical at all. I am hopeless. But so I just want to try to activate that part of my brain just to get myself out of my head because I can get into get down into just be single minded and all of a sudden I'm like, oh God, I've stopped exercise. Like, and
Yeah.
yeah, and I want to try to do that as well. Um, so looking back, what do you wish you knew before you made the leap?
Oh, hindsight is yeah, hindsight is great. Uh, I think like touching on the few things that we've talked about is it like the advice I've gotten now, and it would have been great if I had that from day one, of things like think about personal runway, and also once again, not just of your own, but the people around you, like family and friends, and understand that they're coming on the journey with you as well. So even just with my friendships, being really real and honest with them when things started really picking up for Tallystone, which is, hey, I can't show up in the way that I used to show up. And that doesn't mean I don't love and care for you in the same way that I used to, but there's just this thing that requires so much of my attention. So I can't show up in the way I used to be able to. And realizing that you're taking on along to this on this journey a lot more people than you might think, and being really clear about that, I think is will then also extend your personal runway, because personal runway is not just what's your financial runway, it's what do you need to keep happy and healthy and all those things as well. I think the best piece of advice that I've gotten and I wish I had at the beginning was I can't remember who told me this, and I wish I could so I could give them a shout out, which was having been a startup lawyer, I advised so many startups, and so I was like, oh, I know where all the potholes are. I've seen so many people make all of these mistakes, and so I having all of this knowledge, I should be able to avoid all of them. And I was lamenting to this person about how I'd made all of these mistakes and feeling like I should have known better. I've seen so many founders fall into these traps. Like, why am I finding myself here? I have the knowledge to not make this mistake. And what they said was maybe rather than thinking of these as mistakes, think of them as milestones. And maybe the reason why everyone has to make that mistake is because this is actually a milestone. It means that you're getting to the next level of being a founder, going on this startup journey, and everyone actually has to go through this so they can learn for themselves. And also it's just a part of the journey. And having that piece of advice just completely transformed the way I look at any mistakes that we make, and going, you know what, this is just a milestone. This is something that we have to go through.
Mhm.
And I don't need to beat myself up because I've made the mistake that I've seen so many other founders make.
Yeah, yeah. How you've just answered that other question. You've preempting all these
So
questions about what's the one piece of advice you would give someone standing on the edge, and I think that would you just rounded that
yeah.
out, right? It's all
Yes.
about milestones. Don't think of mistakes as mistakes. Think about them as milestones. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah,
And I think also just like not to sound like a like pre-rehearsed, but like take the leap, and also realize that it might not be as big of a leap as you think. Like it's not you can kind of break it down. So, like I said, it wasn't like I went from not running Tallystone, meeting my co-founders and going full time into it straight away.
yeah.
It's you can just take the next step and then the next step and then reassess and decide to recommit or to jump off. It's you can actually break it down, and rather than thinking of it as this like 0 to 100, just think of like the next step. Am I okay with this? Yes, I am. Okay, then do the next step.
Do you think that when we talked about the stat where it may not be true, but 9 out of 10 startups fail?
Yeah.
Do you think that that's probably where they've probably failed? A certain percentage of them is they go, "Oh, I've got an idea. I'm going to 100% go into it," and all of us they haven't tested it. They've just blind faith. Do you think that's part of the where people fail? They're not cautious enough.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different the different reasons. But I do think that that is like a big part of it as well. And also expecting the overnight success, like once again, just what we were talking about before, is if you if your metric for what success looks like is, oh, I heard of these amazing startups that like is a household name for everyone, and that's how I'm going to benchmark my version of success. And if I don't do that, then I failed and I'm going to just close up shop, and maybe giving up a little bit too early rather than pivoting is something that I've seen with a lot of startups is they go, I'm going to set this kind of crazy goal, which is great. Like set the goal because you might hit it, so why not? And you should try and work towards something big, but also set yourself like a secondary goal or a third level goal where you go, it's not this amazing like overnight sensation I'm going to be the next unicorn, but is this still enough for me to keep going? And I think maybe like I wonder if that's why some startups fail, is because they set an impossible goal, good to do, but then they didn't set like a secondary, this is still good enough.
Yeah. Okay. How has taking the leap changed the way you see yourself?
I think I believe in myself like a lot more, and also and like the capacity that I have, kind of what we were talking about earlier with the trusting your gut, trusting your instincts, and then also knowing that, hey, I can probably learn how to do most things. Like I might not have the answer right now, but I have the capacity to problem solve, and I can teach myself almost anything. And it's things like I've gone into our code and actually done some of the front end code, or, created, parts of our actual product. I have zero level of software development experience. And, sometimes my co-founder's like, no, that's wrong. And it's all a learning experience. But going, you know what, I can teach myself this, and I'm going to plug this like gap of, we just need this like quick fix. So I'm going to learn how to do it. And going and realizing that I have a lot more capacity than I realized, and I enjoy that. I enjoy like the variety, and I don't need to have this identity of I'm a lawyer and I'm a specialist. And that is a measure of success, is I can be a generalist. I can do lots of different things. And that is something to be proud of.
Absolutely. From our conversation today, there's a few key points that I've taken away from this. One is you're a seeker of knowledge. You're not afraid of asking anyone for their answer, and it feels like sometimes you don't know what the answer is, what you're looking for, but you know when you hear it. And you are not afraid. I think also you believe, and I think it's true as well, that everything comes from within with yourself. Like you are changing yourself first, and then that reflects outwards, and you do whatever you need to do to make it sure it doesn't feel as risky to you, and you are just taking your time or making those steps. And I think so many people can learn so many lessons from what you're doing, and it's fantastic. For those of you that are listening, next year, Emily's going to do a masterclass for us online about what is a data room and some things to think about, and how to consider when you may be going for a capital raise. So if you're interested, subscribe to our Substack, which is in the show notes, and we'll keep you informed of that. Emily, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. I don't know, was that a fair assessment of of what I got from our conversation?
I love it. It was a bit of what I said, which is it's always interesting to hear about someone else's perspective of you. That's thank you. I'm flattered and honored that's your assessment of the ramble that has been the last 50 minutes. I really appreciate that.
Well, I think you're very well put together. Like, we're on video here, and there is not a thing out of place in your room, though I do suspect on the other side of this camera it's a bit more messy.
No one needs to see that. It's fine.
No, you should see what's going on this side of the room from there. So thank you. Have a great Christmas, and thank you for being on the leap.
Thank you for having me, and happy holidays.
Oh, I forgot to ask. Sorry. Where can people find you? Yeah. And where can find about Talisone? I may have missed the most important stuff.
No, LinkedIn, always. My name's Emily Price. Find me on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to talk to people about data rooms, capital raising, governance, and just how to run a good company from having good systems and organizations in place. If you're looking for Talisone, www.talisone.com, you can, we have a 7-day free trial right now for the data room as well. So even if maybe a capital raise is 6 months down the track, sign up for a free trial, start to understand what a data room looks like. And then by the time you actually do need it, you can click go and it'll be ready for you. So you can go capital raise and close that deal.
Perfect. All right. No worries. Have a great Christmas, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Gavin.